Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. And welcome back to the podcast, everyone. And yes, it is Friday. We love Fridays because here on the podcast, it's FOMO Friday. We don't want you to have that fear of missing out because you're not listening to propaganda media anymore. And so we bring you the stories of the week that you should know a little bit about, and we give you a little bit about them. So from a series of articles from the Daily Wire comes this very first one. And this has been the one that kind of dominated the headlines of the week. It's been a little bit of a weird week, but this has definitely been the thing that everybody's been talking about, and that is President Donald Trump signed a bill into law Wednesday night requiring the release of documents related to the late financier and a convicted sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the move follows the passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act in both the House and the Senate earlier this week. And now the countdown begins. Attorney General Pam Bondi has 30 days to publish all unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in DOJ's possession that relate to the investigation and prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein, according to the bill summary. Now, the DOJ is also required to release any materials related to Maxwell. That's Maxwell's Epstein's associate and convicted sex trafficker as well. This includes flight records, travel records, individual names or referenced, including government officials in connection with the investigation and prosecution of Epstein. The published information must be released in a searchable and downloadable format, the bill says. However, the release may not be entirely comprehensive. The bill allows the Attorney General to withhold or redact certain records, including victims' names, as well as materials that could jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution. And Trump has consistently called the Democratic push to release the files a hoax. Obviously, there's been a lot of pressure put on the administration to release these files, even though there was no pressure put on the previous administration, who would have loved to have sunk President Trump with Epstein like stuff. They found nothing, and they released nothing, and then all of a sudden there's all this pressure put on the current administration to do so, and you got to wonder, well, why, right? And so Donald Trump has called it a hoax. A White House official who spoke with the Daily Wire argued that he was never opposed to actually releasing the files, but instead opposed to Republicans falling into a Democratic trap of not focusing on issues Americans care about, such as the shutdown, the economy, affordability, and more. Now, the shutdown is over, and Democrats face a White House equipped with fresh information about their communications with the notorious sex offender himself. Uh-oh, it's not looking good. Now that these things are being released, not looking good for the Democratic Party. Quote, there are definitely major figures on the left who are going to regret trying to make a spectacle out of this for political gain. That's shared. Someone, a person familiar with the administration's thinking on the files, shared that. A few figures who may be unhappy with White House Democrats as they find themselves under fire would be Plaskett, former President Bill Clinton, ex-Harvard President Larry Summers, journalist Katie Couric, billionaire Democrat megadonor and LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, and writer Michael Wolff, all of whom the White House mentioned in a recent messaging email decrying Democrat affiliation with Epstein. Quote, why aren't Democrats talking about the fact that Delegate Stacey Plaskett, a Democrat from the U.S. Virgin Islands, solicited and was given $30,000 from Epstein for the DCCC after he was already a convicted sex offender? The White House just simply asked that question. They also said, quote, or the fact that Plaskett herself accepted maxed out donations from Epstein for her own campaign, or the fact that the wife of the former Democratic governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands told Epstein, quote, we would have a friend in Stacey if he made said donations. Or the fact that Plaskett was literally texting Epstein during a committee hearing. So, not looking good for her. Clinton's 26 flights. This would be former President Bill Clinton. His 26 flights on Epstein's Lolita Express are certainly up for scrutiny, as is the fact that one of Epstein's victims says she saw Clinton on Epstein's Little St. James Island with 2 young women. While Clinton's spokesman says that the former president never visited the island, his former deputy assistant, Doug Band, says Clinton did indeed go in 2003. Now, the White House messaging points out that Summers, who also served as Clinton's Treasury Secretary, had a long relationship, as they put it, with Epstein, even acting as Summers' wingman. It also notes that Couric attended a 2010 dinner at Epstein's home 2 years after he had been convicted as a sex offender. The Wall Street Journal reported in May that Reid Hoffman not only visited Epstein's Little St. James, but was scheduled to stay at Epstein's townhouse in Manhattan in 2014. The Democratic National Committee never returned Epstein's $32,000 in donations. And Wolf, and he's an anti-Trump magazine writer who wrote a biography of Epstein, urged Epstein to blackmail the president, writing, you can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime, unquote. Well, all of this is fair game to the White House and possibly more, depending on what the rest of the files contain. But I wanted to bring this to you today because things are just coming out of the woodwork, and Democrats are just freaking out. Like, for instance, the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, has been caught up in some of this stuff now. Democrats, like I say, because of all this, are just simply freaking out. Jasmine Crockett, for instance, is, well, let me put it this way. I'm going to play you a clip, okay? She's been interviewed here about something she said on the House floor, and then they ask her about it. And this is from CNN. And see if you can figure out what she's talking about, okay? Here she is talking to CNN.
Who's been on defense over Jeffrey Epstein is Stacey Plaskett. Democrat who's been on defense over Jeffrey Epstein is Stacey Plaskett. She represents the Virgin Islands. She was texting with Jeffrey Epstein the day of Michael Cohen's hearing. Her questions pretty closely followed the text messages between the two of them to ask about Rona Graff, Trump's longtime assistant. You were defending her today, or in recent days, yesterday, and you talked about Republicans taking money from a Jeffrey Epstein. Here's what you said.
Who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in. Also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly. Mitt Romney, the NRCC, McCain Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio.
He responded and said it was actually Dr. Jeffrey Epstein. You mentioned Lee Zeldin there. He's now a cabinet secretary. Sex trafficker. He responded and said it was actually Dr. Jeffrey Epstein, who's a doctor that doesn't have any relation to the convicted sex trafficker. Unfortunate for that doctor, but that is who donated to a prior campaign of his. Do you want to correct the record on the people?
Listen, I never said that it was that Jeffrey Epstein. Just so that people understand, when you make a donation, your picture is not there. And because they decided to spring this on us in real time, I wanted the Republicans to think about what could potentially happen, because I knew that they didn't even try to go through the FEC. So my team, what they did is they Googled, and that is specifically why I said a Jeffrey Epstein. Unlike Republicans, I at least don't go out and just tell lies. Because it was not the same one, that's fine. But when Lee Zeldin had something to say, all he had to say was it was a different Jeffrey Epstein. He admitted that he did receive donations from a Jeffrey Epstein, so at least I wasn't trying to mislead people. Now, have I dug in to find out who this doctor is? I have not. So I will trust and take what he says, is that it wasn't that Jeffrey Epstein, but I was not attempting to mislead anybody. I literally had maybe 20 minutes before I had to do that debate.
Yeah, but people might see that and say, well, you're trying to make it sound like he took money from
I did not know.
A registered sex offender.
No, but I literally did not know. When you search FEC files, and that's what I had my team to do, I texted them and I said, listen, we're going up. They are saying that she took donations.
Right, but someone might say, well, your team should have done the homework to make sure it wasn't the convicted sex trafficker.
Within 20 minutes, you could not find that out, not from just doing a quick search on FEC. So number one, I made sure that I was clear that it was a Jeffrey Epstein, but I never said that it was specifically.
So she's saying, well, I didn't lie,
because I knew that we
you
would need
know,
more
when I was on the House floor, I just said, you know, look at all these guys taking money from Jeffrey Epstein. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. You know, they are getting desperate. It really is sad to see things like this, but you know, I mean, it's not that they didn't bring it on themselves, and so, you know, we'll see what happens from here. Now, speaking of sad, though, in Illinois, there is a bill that has been passed, and it's being sent to Governor Pritzker's desk, and it's a bill about assisted suicide. And I saw an opinion piece by this, and I thought she did a great job. This opinion piece is by Mary Vaught, who is the Vice President of Strategic Communications of the Heritage Foundation and a former member of the National Council on Disability. And I thought she did a great job with this, so I wanted to bring it to you and see what you thought of it. And she says, recently the Illinois legislature approved a bill that would legalize so-called physician-assisted suicide in the state. The bill now rests on Governor J.B. Pritzker's desk, and he has until November 30th to decide whether to sign it into law. He shouldn't. In fact, he should veto it. No matter how much advocates attempt to paint euthanasia as compassionate, the truth stands. Euthanasia, no matter what form it takes, creates a culture of death, jeopardizing, not protecting, the most valuable and vulnerable in our society. Look at Illinois' bill, for example. If passed, it would allow physician-assisted suicides for individuals who are suffering from a terminal illness and have been given less than 6 months to live. As a result, advocates have painted it as a way for the already dying, and only the already dying, to secure death with dignity. Yet the bill limits do nothing to make it more ethical than legislation that allows the euthanasia of anyone at any time. Every human life has value, no matter how much time that life has left. Ending a life, no matter what stage that life is at, does not give it dignity. It devalues it, treating it as worthless and disposable. Even if that weren't true, allowing assisted suicide in any circumstances lays the first stone in creating a culture of death that that spread throughout society. Look at Canada. While their assisted suicide program allegedly began to help people in extreme circumstances secure death with dignity, it's now expanded so much that it allows for same-day suicide for a broad range of conditions, including mental illness. As a result, rates of suicide have grown exponentially, increasing 13-fold between 2016 and 2022, and totaling a shocking 15,343 in 2023. Physician-assisted suicide has reached such a point in the UK that former Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, said last year that he, quote, worried people would feel compelled to ask to die if they felt like a burden, unquote. Any legislation of assisted dying opens the way to it broadening out, Welby said, causing people who aren't terminally ill to ask for it or feel pressured to ask for it. The hurt, this hurts the entire society, but it's especially harmful to the most vulnerable, including those, as she says, like my daughter with disabilities. In a society that treats life as meaningless and treats imposing a burden on someone else as a reason to die, those with disabilities and mental illnesses are sure to fall prey. In Canada, they already are. In fact, highlighted in stories like that of Alan Nichols, a 61-year-old who was involuntarily committed and then euthanized within a month. Such stories paint a grim picture of society that treats patients not as people, but as objects to be discarded. The second, caring for them would require effort. Those with disabilities should know they don't have to throw their life away simply because of the challenges their disabilities pose. Their lives have value. Ending a human life, any life, is wrong, regardless of whether that life belongs to someone close to death, to someone with a disability or mental illness, or to someone who simply feels isolated or lonely. Governor Pritzker should veto Illinois' dangerous legislation and reaffirm the American principle that every human, no matter who they are, has the right to life. I really could not agree with that more. Definitely something that we'll be watching. I doubt that he is going to veto it, and it looks like he's probably going to sign it. I mean, Pritzker is a very liberal governor, and we'll see what happens with that. But hey, tell you what, let's get on to a little bit of good news here. A couple who won a landmark Supreme Court victory in favor of parental rights said their Christian faith helped them through the dramatic ordeal that began when their daughter took a book pushing transgender ideology home from her Maryland school. In April, Chris and Melissa Persak, a Catholic family, found themselves and other allied parents arriving at the Supreme Court to hear oral arguments in their case against the Montgomery County Board of Education over whether they had the right to opt their kids out of instruction on transgender ideology. In June, the Persaks, who were represented by the Beck Foundation for Religious Liberty, won a decisive 6-3 victory with the Supreme Court majority, declaring that they and other parents had expansive oversight over what their children were taught at schools. Quote, we said prayers of the Holy Spirit and just felt this unbelievable calmness as we were walking in. Even with the protesters, even with the members of the leadership of Montgomery County who were protesting against us live that day, they felt that calm, is what Chris said. We just felt like this was the right thing that God was saying. Yep, this is exactly what I asked you to do. It's been 24 months, and I know you guys have taken, shrapnel and things that have come at you, and people, threaten your children and you and your friends, and it was Vindication Day, he said. On Tuesday, the Persacks appeared on Beckett's Stream of Conscious podcast alongside Jeff Roman and other family who challenged the Montgomery County's opt-out policies. And the legal battle began in March of 2023 when the school board said that it would no longer let parents opt out of books pushing transgender and queer ideology. In response, a group of Christians, Muslims, and Jewish parents challenged the county in Mahmoud versus Taylor. Now, one of them said, this person, Svilana, said that during her appearance on the podcast, which was previewed by the Daily Wire and others, that she became involved in the legal fight because she just wanted parents like her to have the opinion to opt their elementary age kids from sexualized materials in the classroom. Quote, all I would like to ask is, one, to make it very clear that the teachers have an opportunity to teach it or not. And then two, give the choice to parents to opt in, she said. Now, Melissa Persack echoed that same sentiment when she said that this whole lawsuit was, we just wanted the rights to our own children and what they're going to learn, she said. It has nothing to do with anybody else's kids. But, obviously, in the process now, we want to protect everyone, all the parents, and all of their children. Chris, her husband, added that the entire saga revealed how citizens could fight for their rights under the Constitution. He described being at the Supreme Court as a powerful moment because citizens can stand up for what we believe is protected under the Constitution by a system that was essentially set up nearly 250 years ago. Quote, we just want the best for our kids and our families and have access to the freedoms granted under the Constitution, he added. And the ability to see that happen in real time at the political level has been awesome. It's been awe-inspiring. When the decision was announced, Chris said the jubilation was just simply unbelievable. I can imagine. Basket lawyer Will Hahn told the Daily Wire that the decision in Mahmoud came 100 years after the Supreme Court issued a decision protecting the rights of parents to send their kids to religious schools, which is good. And in light of the decision, Montgomery County has rolled out a system known as refrigerator curriculum, giving parents broad access to essentially every material used in the classroom. Not bad, right? The breadth of material has prompted some parents to worry they might miss something, but Hahn said it was a sign that things were changing. I would agree. Business as usual in Montgomery County when it came to opt-outs was not acceptable anymore, he said. And I think that became abundantly clear with the Supreme Court's decision victory for the parents. So, like I say, I mean, here these guys they saw something that needed attention, something that was unbiblical and had to be changed, and they did it. And they went to court and they did it. And I know we reported on that not long ago on that decision. And I wanted to bring you just a little more insight into those parents and what they leaned on. They leaned on their faith. They leaned on the Constitution, and they were able to get it done. Well, as I've said before, I am not a celebrity guy, but I know many of you do have a lot of interest there. So I try to bring you on FOMO Fridays at least something when it comes to celebrities, and I bring you a couple of them actually this week. After decades of snubs, actor Tom Cruise was awarded an Academy Honorary Award at the Governor's Awards on November 16th. Despite being nominated several times for Oscars in the past, including for his work on Born on the 4th of July, Jerry Maguire, Magnolia, and Top Gun Maverick, the 63-year-old movie star has never won an Oscar. His fans believe that he was being unfairly shunned by the Academy. Quote, "The cinema, it takes me around the world," Cruise said during his emotional acceptance speech. It helps me to appreciate um, and respect differences. It shows me also our shared humanity, how alike we are in so many ways. And no matter where we come from in that theater, we laugh together, we feel together, we hope together, and that is the power of this art form. And that is why it matters. That is why it matters to me, he said. He also added that, making films is not what I do, it is who I am. He's not a Christian, he's a Scientologist, but so that's, not that he's really into his work. I get it. But when you identify with your work, and that's your identity, you can become unbalanced. But he did say that, he said, "My love for cinema began at a very early age, as early as I can remember." And he said that I was just a little kid in a darkened theater, and I remember the beam of light just cut through the room, and I remember looking up, and it seemed to be just it just exploded on the screen. Suddenly, the world was so much larger than the one that I knew. And he went on to say that for him, films sparked a hunger for adventure, a hunger for knowledge, a hunger to understand humanity, to create characters, and to tell a story, to see the world. Cruz said that it opened my eyes. It opened my imagination to the possibility that life could expand far beyond the boundaries that I then perceived in my own life. And that beam of light opened a desire to open the world, and I have been following it ever since. So kind of interesting. And speaking of interesting, fitness influencer Jillian Michaels was amazed to discover that Jesus Christ was a real person who existed and whose existence was chronicled in texts beyond just the Bible. The conversation took place during an episode of Michael's podcast, actually, while she was speaking with world-class historian and Hoover Institute senior fellow Victor Davis Hanson. If you haven't seen anything from Victor Davis Hanson, go right out and please do so. He's very good. Hanson was discussing the specific issues the Romans had with Jesus, which prompted her to admit that she was surprised to learn his existence was widely accepted as a historical fact. She said, "I thought we didn't even know this guy. This is going to infuriate people, and I'm so sorry I stay out of it. But I thought we weren't even really sure whether or not Jesus existed. And the apostles wrote this stuff hundreds of years ago." Well, Hoover explained that we have Roman documents completely separate from religion, that he was a magnet. He was a romantic, wonderful person to the people who knew him, and he had staged a revolution, and that presented a problem in this troublesome province, obviously. The historian recounted how Pontius Pilate was a Roman official who was most interested in keeping the peace in the region, and so he pushed the blame for Jesus being put to death onto the Pharisees, using the justification that this move helped achieve that goal. And Hanson also noted that Jesus' teachings were the antithesis of what the Romans believed. Quote, "He got a new religion, and unfortunately, it's turned the other cheek. Brotherhood of man, blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor. It's not Roman. We have a Roman military ethos that the strong inherit the earth, and if an enemy offends you, you hit him twice. And this guy is preaching something very different. And then he goes on, when anybody says that the Jews killed Jesus, it's more like the Romans wanted a quiet providence, and they did not like Jesus, and what he represented was anti-Roman. So they said basically, well, in Judaism and in Judea and the Jewish establishment, the religious establishment doesn't like him any more than we do, so we can get rid of him and then say the Pharisees basically did it. This is a comeback here by Michaels. She said that this is so wild. I'm sorry. I know it's not wild for people who know this information, but I genuinely thought, okay, the Jews had the Old Testament, the Torah, and then maybe there was this guy Jesus. Anyway, she said that she was basically in awe. She said the apostles wrote stuff, but the first guy who wrote something was like 90 or so years later. So we think maybe there's some Dead Sea Scrolls kind of mention this guy Jesus. But anyway, Michaels doesn't talk really much about religion publicly, but described herself as not a religious person and an agnostic in 2024. So kind of interesting as people start to understand facts and things and how that affects them. But hey, wanted to end on kind of an interesting note as well today, and it has to do with spiders. So arachnophobics, you might want to turn the podcast off now. What is thought to be the world's largest known spider's web, housing tens of thousands of arachnids, has been discovered in a cave on the Albanian-Greek border after researchers published their findings of two different spider species peacefully coexisting in a giant colony nesting in a pitch black sulfur-rich cave. They're calling it the world's largest spider web. Said it's extremely rare to see these two spiders really having a party together, as they call it. There's about what they figure about 69,000 common house spiders in there, and another 42,000 smaller spiders, and they're just partying away, making this really big web that they live in, and in this cave. And so, yeah, if you want to take a look at that, you're not arachnophobic, you can Google that, and I'm sure you can find that. But I would love to hear your thoughts on the week, and of course, you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Thank you very much for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.